Determine the domain of functions. Okay, so you have h of x is equal to x minus 3. Now, for the most part, your answers are always going to be all reals. The only time where there will be a stipulation is if you have a fraction. If you have a fraction or if you have a square root, then it's not going to be all reals. So you're looking for a fraction or you're looking for a square root sign. If it has that, then there's going to be a stipulation like, x cannot be 3 or x has got to be bigger than 3 or something like that. So that's only if you see a fraction. But if you look at this problem here, there is no fractions, there is no square roots. So this is going to be all reals. So what do I mean by all reals? Any number that you can think of, you could put in for x. There's nothing in there that's going to make that undefined. And what I mean by undefined is putting the 0 as a denominator. So there's not even a fraction there. So again, this is all real. So your solution, your answer to this one would be all reals. Okay, your next one. Now you do have a fraction here. And we just finished talking about, if the fractions, there's going to be a restriction on it. But if you look at this one right here, look at the 2 on the bottom. There's no x there on the bottom. So there's no x there. So if the x was down in the denominator, then we would have a restriction there. But the x is not there. The x is up in the numerator. So if the x is in the numerator and the denominator is just a regular number, well, again, this can be all reals, because there's no way that that bottom number can be 0, because you want to stay away from anything that can make that 0, make that denominator 0. Well, it'll never be 0 because it's always going to be a 2. Any number that you put in this problem here is going to go on the top with the x. So again, there is no restriction on it. Even though there's a fraction, you always want to be careful with the fraction. The x is up on the top, so this can be any number that you can think of. Now we have a square root here. So now this is the one that does have a restriction to it. So we can't say all reals to this. So we want to stay away from any number that can actually make this negative. So any number that could make this a negative number here. So what we want to do is we want to say x plus 3, and then we don't want this to be negative. So we're going to, we want this to be better than or equal to 0. So we're going to do like a one-step inequality question here, or equation, to solve this down. So we're going to subtract both sides by 3. So in doing so, we'll cross that out. This becomes x, and this is a negative 3. So we always want the x to be better than or equal to negative 3. So the x has got to be better than or equal to negative 3. So that means you have to use numbers such as negative 2, negative 1, 0, 1, 2, and so forth. So you need all the numbers to the right, including even decimals and fractions in there as well. What number you cannot use is a negative 4. See, if I was to use a negative 4 inside here, that'll give me a negative 4 plus 3, and this gives me the square root of a negative number. Well, the square root of a negative number is not possible, using real numbers. So this right here is not possible. NP not possible with the real numbers. So you can't go to your left. I mean, you have to start. The lowest you can go is really actually a negative 3 here, because the negative 3 and the positive 3 would give you a square root of 0. And see, the square root of 0 is 0, and you're still okay. but it's no way you can have a negative number under there. So what I did was I took the the x plus 3, set that actually used the inequality sign greater than or equal to 0, and just solve down the one step inequality. So the best choice here would be B. Okay, now look at the problem here. There is no fraction and there is no square root. This is just x minus 4. Well, there's no restriction on this, so this can be all reals. So you can see for the most part when you're solving these down, I think 3 out of 4 answers were all real. So if you have to take an educated guess on this, you would probably have to say most of the time, majority of the time, it's going to be all real values. The only stipulation to that is if you have a square root and if you had a fraction, let's say it was 2 as the numerator and the denominator was x. So if you had a letter on the bottom, that would be a stipulation to that, because you never want that to be 0. So those would be numbers where you couldn't say all reals. So in that case there, x could be anything but 0. You can never have 0 as a denominator.